Whew, the Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, here with you. I'm here with you for another SOVRYN Q&A. And it's an interesting thing. People always seem to enjoy when I do a little shop talk around podcasting in general, not necessarily my shop. But, a lot of podcasts now, like they don't do like introductions, right? Like they don't do, where they tell you who the host is and all this stuff. And I think a big part of that just comes down to like that's really a holdover from radio. I like it. I like the presentation. I like setting up the themes and everything that's going on with the show and whatever. But now it's like conversations just start like mid-sentence and they just go. No theme music, none of that crap. Like just start the conversation and run. And admittedly, for a very long time, I have been doing the whole, the Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, the whole business. And, years ago, I said maybe that's not necessary anymore. And I had some listeners like respond and say, yeah, you don't really need to do that anymore. But I don't know. It's still fun for me and it gets me kind of hyped up. I don't know if it gets you hyped up, but who knows? Maybe I'll try not doing an intro and just hitting in. And, you always have like the opening tone or whatever. But that's the thing is like, you don't really like my show used to be on a lot of like online radio networks or, online streaming networks or whatever. And I don't mean like Netflix, I mean audio ones. Now it's not there because it's not popular. It's not on those anymore because most of those don't exist anymore. I mean, they're gone. Like everything's gone to YouTube and Spotify. Everything's gone to video, and like very few people could afford to stream video 24/7 from their own servers and whatever else, and just always have that available, right? So anyway, now, when people find you, like all that information is right there. It's all by the algorithm. So you don't need to hook them in with the big intros and all that stuff, like I said. And maybe it's something I'll experiment with, but anyway, I still have fun, like just letting it rip and letting it go all out there. This conversation for this Q&A though, is something that's not going to be fun. I tried to have fun yesterday, with an episode with another Q&A that I released around music. And I didn't even get into everything around that I wanted to talk about. And I imagine there's going to be questions beyond it as well. Haven't gotten any negative response yet. So great. I was waiting for that. But, I'll say this quickly before we get into our main topic around the Jews. I'll say this quickly that I think most people have just really given up like on a lot of like on concepts like self-hosting and other things. I could be wrong about that. And hey, email me, fu@xxtech.net. Okay. Email me if you disagree. And if you are aware of like large communities, when I say large communities, I mean, at least in like the 5 digits, 6 digits is even better, of people who are like, no, everything's self-hosting, blah, blah, blah. And they just they never, ever touch Spotify. They don't touch Apple Music. They don't touch YouTube Music, whatever. Like they just don't, everything for them is self-hosting. I mean, I think there might be still quite a few people who do it as a backup, but people as their primary, I admittedly have a hard time believing it, but I could be wrong. And I would so fucking love to be wrong, because self-hosting is still such a key thing. But like I talked about in the most recent Q&A, I feel like it's really like there was a time where there was this hybrid time where, it was still like difficult to produce media of any kind. Okay. So there was a scarcity, and you were basically able, if you were somebody that torrented or, however you did it, you were able to like be able to have everything, say, around a certain genre, topic, whatever, blah, blah, blah. That is absolutely fucking impossible today. It's just impossible. And it's not even because of like global communication, even just what gets made in the goddamned US. Emphasis on the goddamned. No way. I don't believe you. I just don't. You know, like I have a hard time believing that there's somebody out there right now who experiences, maybe that's a kind word, integrates, reads, follows everything about Star Wars. Everything, you know, and that includes comics, audiobooks, audio plays, shorts, or, you know, like short form content, whatever, you know, all of it. And all of Star Trek and all of, I don't know, something else, whatever, like, and actually works like a 9-to-5 job. Okay. You know, like actually has to subsist. I have a hard time believing that like that person exists anymore when that kind of person actually used to be incredibly commonplace. You know, I don't believe it. and I don't know, but you know, and I guess there's a larger conversation to get in around that. In that, like, you know, what, like, how do fans like take in stuff now? Like, how do they take in their favorite franchises and universes now? What does that look like? You know, but I think ultimately, I'll just say this, then we'll get into our topic. We've lost something in that when there's no real scarcity, there's no way to really like without scarcity, you can't integrate. Like if the zone is just flooded, as the KGB would say, if the zone is just flooded, like you can't, you know, all you do is you're just a consumption machine. Like you don't actually like integrate things and make them say more, you know, a part of your life. And this is sad because science fiction, which like I said recently might be the greatest psyop of all time, but science fiction at one point, you know, especially when it started, was intensely philosophical and political. Intensely. I'm not saying that it was like communist or capitalist. I mean, it certainly had its elements of that. Okay. But I am saying that it was intensely like political and that it was trying to influence perhaps new ideologies, new types of economies, new types of whatever. There was a time when, and new types of psychology, I mean, everything. It was trying to develop the new human in a very real way. But when science fiction and fantasy gets to the point that it's at now, where it's just, you know, deluge, just boom, 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 like something new every fucking second, blah, blah, blah. Like there's no voices getting out there. There's no message really getting out there. There's just like, oh, experience. Can I share this at the water cooler? Did it make me feel something while watching it with my partner who I've lost all feelings for because nothing can be as goddamned exciting as the pretty lights that Netflix puts on the screen and blah, blah, blah. I ask myself this. And it's a pity. It's not saying, I mean, should everybody be able to write their books that they want? Yes, but should there be filters for quality? Maybe. I know somebody's going to be like, oh, you sound like Andrew Keene and Andrew Keene's an asshole or something like that. Well, he had some points right back in the day. But only some. Calm down. Okay. So that said, it's kind of fitting really, because we are also met with not just a deluge of entertainment today, but we are met with a deluge of news. News that comes from a multitude of perspectives. News that seems to come like it's the same exact reporting, or it's the same exact event that occurred, but it looks like it happened in two different universes. Because the perspective of what happened is completely different from one source to the next. And it's so funny because it feels like, I mean, you know, when you get people who think there's no like objective reality, I mean, yeah, like if you just spend enough time on your smartphone, you're going to question the very concept of objective reality because you're like, wait, how can there be all of these different interpretations of what went on? What is the truth? And it's a great question to ask, but unfortunately most people aren't like, they don't have the, shall we say, mental or even, I don't want to use the word philosophical. I hate that. They don't have the psychological, how about that? They don't have the psychological rigor to even handle like reading between the lines and, trying to understand what this means, what all of this information means, regardless of perspective. What does it actually mean going into the future? And that's a big part of what we have to talk about today. Okay. And this came from a question that occurred before the events of Friday the 13th. In fact, if I'm to understand it correctly, June 13th is the only Friday the 13th of 2025, which is perhaps interesting in its own way, but it's also the day that the government of Israel, and I said the government of Israel, launched precision missile strikes against targets in Iran. Military targets, nuclear targets. Of course, again, with the deluge of information out there, how many people have died from this? Who was actually killed? Were some of the, are there things that weren't military targets? And then Iran, of course, fired back, killing some in Tel Aviv, sending millions of people, running to shelter and so on, getting past the Iron Dome in Israel. And do a lot of the factoids necessarily matter? Yes, I'm not going to say they're not important. Like I told you in the previous Q&A, of course, the first casualty of any war is the truth. So a lot of the statistics and these other things, you're not going to get the complete numbers. Now, again, I can tell you this, as somebody who was in the military, who was in multiple wars, that, like say the death toll, you never get told the accurate death toll. Never. You never, ever, 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 ever get told the actual death toll. It's almost always worse. And if it's not worse, it's because the one side is trying to make it look like they didn't get hit as bad as the other claims. But you're never, ever getting the accurate numbers, ever. So in some sense, the numbers don't matter. The people do, of course, but the numbers don't matter. Any death is a tragedy. Any death, regardless of species, nationality, whatever. And I can stand behind that species statement very well. So, this question that I got was from before these events. And in fact, I've actually gotten a lot of emails and messages from people very concerned, for my life. And I'm so honored. Like I cannot tell you how honored I am by that, to have people that care about, me and my wife, in that way. I mean, that's such an amazing thing and an absolute treasure, for anyone to achieve the point that you have people that reach out to you, when things like this are occurring and saying, are you okay? You have done something right in your life if you have that. And I'm very honored by that. So I want to, regardless of what I say here, I want to make sure that is recognized and that space is held for that, because it's beautiful. And thank you. Okay. Now what is happening is not beautiful. So the question that I'm going to address actually occurred. Well, it's twofold. One, this question actually got asked during a recent Into the Void that I did with the boys at the Agora podcast, of course, Penguin and Sec, asking, and Sec asked me in that episode, which is in this podcast feed, in the Master SOVRYN Podcast Feed. If you want to listen to it, it's very recent. And it was before any of these events. But it's when things seem to be building up. I want to say, was that like late April or was that in May? Maybe it was in May. Anyway, yeah, I think it was in May. It was like mid-May. So, it was like, Sec asked me, like, Brian, are you worried? Like with a lot of the anti-Semitism being reported on. Okay. And folks, I'm trying to be very particular in my terms here in saying that these are things reported on, so that I don't have to deal in the YouTube or Spotify comments with people saying that didn't actually happen, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So I'm trying to be very particular in that there are things I'm reporting that I'm saying were reported on. Okay. And sometimes that's all we have to go on. And, you know, we can act accordingly or choose to do what we do with that information, whether it's the reality or not. Okay. So I want to be very particular on that and that I'm aware of that. I think it's part of the reason I like to think to myself, the reason I don't actually get a lot of YouTube or Spotify comments is because I actually cover most of the bases, you know? And so there isn't like anybody, there's no well actually in my comment section, or maybe it's just because, you know, like the YouTube page hasn't, you know, blown up yet or something. Anyway, either way, it's fine. So let me get to the second question, which came after the events where it was reported that an Egyptian national set multiple Jewish people on fire. Again, the details, I'm not going to get into them here. You can look those up from your, I don't ever want to say the word trusted news sources because fuck, what are those? But your go-tos. Okay. How about that? Your go-to news sources, your favorite news sources. Those certainly could be a thing. So I'm going to read Sex's question here. Okay, and then we're going to get into it, and we'll include, this was asked of me before the events in Iran. Okay, so here we go. So I assume, quote, so I assume you heard about, by the way, I used AI for this, and it fucked up again. So I'm going to do the best. Okay, here we go. Maybe it'll make you feel better about AI because it screws up transcripts so much. Here we go. So I assume you heard about what's being reported as an Egyptian national setting on fire, whatever, I'm paraphrasing there. Jewish folks at a protest to release the hostages and what have you. And it's just in the fucking I told you so, but man, this is fucking making me nervous. I will say, and I'm not making any kind of like claim or accusation here, but the people being killed are sort of, I would say, political adversaries of Benjamin Netanyahu. And I wouldn't put it past that guy to do just about anything. The first two in the embassy, that was that young couple that was killed also. They are critical of Netanyahu, and they did a lot of work to try and help Gazans. And then it says Aunt Terry and stuff, whatever. And I don't know the specific people at this protest that were lit on fire, but most of the people that have been protesting the return of the hostages have been critical of Netanyahu, or that Netanyahu isn't prioritizing the release of the hostages, at least inside of Israel. So I don't know what do you think about all this, man? And I think he was asking, are we fucked? Is this the powder keg? Okay, so I think Sex's question has that last part, is this the powder keg, has been very much answered because what's happening between Israel and Iran does not appear to be slowing down. It would appear that as of June 17th, 2025. My understanding of what's being reported is that Trump, he left G7 quickly and is considering what the U.S. exactly is going to do, made some very, very, very harsh statements towards Iran, saying that, basically if you attack U.S. forces in any way, you're going to be met with a reaction that the likes of which you've never seen. Very strong terms. I mean, who let that guy in office? I don't know, but okay. But I have also been saying since 2021, actually, that we have been, and I talked about this on the recent Into the Void as well, that we have been in World War III for some years now. It's been a cyber Cold War is what I called it. That it's already been fought. Okay. Lines have been drawn. China is not on our side, or is not on our, fuck that, fuck the U.S., is not on the U.S.'s side, okay? And it's just been happening very quietly, and again, it's been a cyber war. Now, the Ukraine-Russia conflict, which has also heated up recently, as of June 2025, to some previously unreached proportions, I think is also a product of this World War III, and may very well be the thumb flick that lit the match of the physical, not the cyber, but the physical aspects, the meat space aspects of World War III. What is happening in Israel? versus Iran, like this is another aspect of this. It is very important to point out that even in Israel's own words, the missile launches on the 13th, on Friday the 13th, were the result of years of planning. Years of planning. This is not something that happened overnight. This is something that was being worked on. Now you even get, you get stories reported that, like that Israel is using, AI and smuggled drones and spies and whatever, to hobble Iran. I mean, those stories are out there. Now, how are they using AI? Like what exactly does that even mean? Okay. Now I want to touch on that. We'll get to the Jewish ellipses here in a minute. Okay. But I want to respond to this first part around the technology being used because, people hear AI is being used by Mossad, right? And this was a Mossad plan. AI is being used by Mossad. See, AI, dangerous, terrible, blah, blah, blah. Okay. All that the AI did, the AI was not directly plugged into those same drones being discussed. Just not. It's not. Okay. We could talk about things like Gorgon Stare and whatever else, and that is a whole other gigantic conversation. Okay. But let me assure you of this. The most advanced military technologies that exist today have yet to be implemented in any meaningful way, either in the Russian-Ukrainian conflict or war, or the present Israel-Iran conflict, or Israel versus Hamas, minus those exploding pagers, which should terrify the fuck out of everybody. That happened, last year, where there were pagers that were clearly, explosives were implemented in them at either the shipping or manufacturing process well in advance by, the Israeli military, and then used to kill, Hamas soldiers and also civilians. The idea that something you buy, say on Amazon or whatever retailer or maybe even underground way that you get these things. Okay. And I don't think that these were sold by Lords of War, if you'd take my meaning, Nick Cage. The idea of electronics, everyday electronics that you buy being laced with explosives. Okay. Or have explosives injected into them, whatever, or, put into them, etc. Again, just think of it. You could buy, a smartphone. I mean, maybe not a smartphone. I mean, because the issue becomes of heat and, things getting prematurely triggered and whatever else. Okay. So, maybe buying a Pixel phone is actually like a self-defense measure because nobody would put an explosive in that because the thing would go off the instant you run it for more than an hour because those fuckers overheat like there's no tomorrow. But I jest, but I barely jest in that electronics, again, radios, whatever, that pagers, whatever. I mean, amazing that those are in use, but you get my point. Whatever you end up getting could actually be explosives, could be a weapon against you, and you have no idea. None. Imagine that. That has already been a part of, the present string of conflicts that comprise this Cold World War III. But this point that you can't even trust anything you buy is something to keep in the back of your mind as we explore this whole subject. Okay? Now, what I was actually getting at was that we've yet to really see some of the more advanced technologies that presently exist, okay, for warfare. So, what AI was actually used in all of this, okay? We have a good idea of what it was. And it's basically, it is effectively, LLMs, whatever they happen to be, but it is LLMs. And what was done is the LLMs were used to do what? Sift through large data sets that, basically the Israeli military's signal intelligence, which would be like unit 8200 or unit 8200 as they call it. I always call it unit 8200. Which most people don't even know exist. Like Unit 8200 is every bit as quote unquote good as the NSA. Like their skill set is pound for pound as quote unquote good. I'm putting good in quotes because obviously these people are fucking heinous. Okay. It's just as good as the NSA. Most people have never heard of Unit 8200 though. Anyway. Okay. So AI, LLMs were used, these models were used to sift through all of this data that was being collected, about Iranian activities. That's it. That's it. Okay. and I just want to make this conversation like super clear. I know you hate it when I talk about AI now, but let me, I've got to get this through people's heads. Okay. AI is really fucking good at handling data. That's its job. I like it that it does that because it does the same thing for my data, for what I do, even on my local models, whatever, through my data sets that I put into it. Dynamite. Can that be used for ill? Clearly. Is that Skynet? Not even close. Not even remotely near it. No, it's not. This AI was never given control of the missiles. That was all inputted by human scumbags. That needs to be emphasized. Okay? But I fucking love the media, man, because they're just like, oh, Israel used AI. Oh, fuck. Now, when you get into the stories, thankfully, the journalists are at least honest there because they have to be, because they get called out. But in the headlines, oh, no. No, let's scare the fuck out of people for no reason whatsoever. Like, what's the reaction to this? The reaction to this from the everyday person should not be, shut down AI. No, that's not the reaction. The reaction is, you need to lessen the amount of data that you produce. That's the reaction. We talked about, or there was that recent, interview on Tucker fucking Carlson with Pavel Durov. And I'll give that moron, I mean Carlson, I'll give that moron one little bit of credit, okay, in that he kind of pushed Pavel Durov into saying, like he asked Pavel Durov, like, can I see your phone? What phone are you using? Blah, blah, blah. And Pavel Durov's like, oh, I don't use a phone. I haven't used the phone in over a year since I got arrested, but I wasn't using one before that anyway. I'm paraphrasing, but this is accurate. Okay. And he said that no, like a phone is a security threat. A phone is like a health threat, basically, like it affects his focus and all these other things. He has a phone that he keeps around so that he can test, so he can see what development on Telegram is like, but he does not use a phone. When he wants to get business done, he sits down at a laptop or an iPad. Both, in my opinion, both phenomenal choices. Because you have far more control with the laptop, you have far more control and just better tools to get shit done. Okay. And an iPad, certainly with iOS 26 coming in the fall, holy shit, that thing very much is a computer. And when you have what is, I think, arguably the most secure, yep, it's not open source, but arguably the most secure operating system, that being iOS/iPadOS, on a really hardened device, I mean, that makes all the sense in the fucking world for him to want to use an iPad, especially with what's coming, where we're in iOS 26. Now you have like multi-windowing and you really have a genuine desktop environment. Okay. But Tucker Carlson was like, he's like, I wanted to ask this of you because it's amazing how many people who do understand technology, thank you for the humbleness, Tucker Carlson, because you don't use phones. Right on. Right on. And part of that is this very thing that, especially now with AI, right? Like you're just jizzing data all over the face of the planet. Boom, 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 boom. Oh yeah. Peter North, baby. Laptops, certainly they can be just as bad. They can be. Okay, but you can do a lot more with a laptop to prevent a lot of that stuff. And there's things you can do with a smartphone as well, honestly. Like I mentioned about running, a VPN and turning on like what we would effectively call anti-AI, network packets that would get used, with your connection and, quantum resistance, all these kinds of things. Okay. So these are very helpful things to do for sure. But a laptop's going to give you a lot more control around that. Not only a lot more control, but you're going to have software where you can actually like on Windows, I use Networks. And it's killer software. I used to use like Wireshark and others, but where you can like monitor a lot of your network traffic and you can see what the fuck's going on. And you can see it all the time and you can get alerts. And like, there's so many more ways to really secure your shit and to genuinely take control of your data. Okay. And we already know that like, I mean, we have the conclusive evidence that even on something like iOS, that Apple does allow traffic to get past the VPN for Apple's own apps. Okay. So yeah, having a laptop, that's a much better way, to more guarantee your privacy, regardless really of what OS you may be, using in those senses. Now, I mean, you could say when you get that kind of paranoid, should you be rocking a Linux machine anyway? Yeah, sure. If you want to go that far, that's fine. But I mean, there's really a lot of ways to lock down more general, computing devices, that run, say Mac OS even, Windows, believe it or not, or Linux or, BSD, whatever floats your boat. Okay. So the real trick is to lessen the amount of transmitted of data that you transmit and generate. That's the trick. Okay. Just because AI is being used in this war, and again, they're using the same large language models that you get access to. This also proves my fucking point. The government is buying, yes, there are weapons that exist that, the everyday person does not have access to. But as far as computational technology, as far as computers go, you have access to the same shit that they're using. Yes, you do. You might not have access to like the same hardened version of Windows that they have. Okay. Or whatever, whatever they have, or you don't have SIPRnet or something like that. But as far as like the actual hardware and most of the software, yeah, you've got it. Like even like the military version of Android that the military uses, that like literally the US military uses like specific forms of Android for some of their, I'll just say their gadgetry. Okay. Their tools. You can download that. It's open source. You can use it yourself. Yeah, they have access to drones. They have access to other things. I mean, that's a whole other thing that like the Russian war is showing that actually, no, like the guerrilla soldier, quote unquote, could also develop like, very effective drone warfare, using stuff that you could buy at Walmart. So the idea, okay, that there are some kind of like wildly advanced technologies that the government has access to that they, implement against the populace. You have to rethink that a little bit. You have to get a bit over that fear. Okay. and because they love to really like those governments, militaries around the world, they love to make you think, that they have like all this kind of like really, high-end secret shit or whatever. But then you find out, oh, they use Signal just like we do, and anyway, there is something to get over that. I'm not saying they don't have advanced things. I just did say that they do. They have weapons of war that we have yet to see. Okay. Or that we have yet to like really see implemented or be used. But even those, like I mentioned, Gorgon Stare, we know about them. Okay. And we can actually understand them because the technology is effectively the same. Now, was some kind of non-human intelligence developed technology, was that used during the Apollo missions to get us to the moon? Okay, that's a separate conversation. but who knows where the hell all that went, because NASA scientists don't seem to know how the fuck anybody got to the moon now. And it's not because we didn't go there. We did. It's a whole other conversation and whatever. I don't want to get lost on that. God damn it. We're talking about the Jews. Wait. So is that really just the same thing? I'm kidding. Okay. Moving right along. So the AI being used, calm the fuck down. Okay? All right. I want to get the tech aspect of this out of the way. All right? Because that's not even necessarily what this question is about, but I want that to be abundantly clear because there is just an ass ton of FUD being spread about that right now. Do I approve, as, a Jew myself and someone who strongly, openly, proud, with extreme pride, is out there as a Jew, which I am. Do I approve of what Israel is doing against Iran? No, not at all. Do I approve of what Iran is doing against Israel? No, not at all. I don't approve of war. War is never inevitable. War is never an absolute. There are people who want this. That's a bit of a separate conversation to have. Is it some kind of Jewish cabal? No. Fuck no. It's just not. Okay. Is it the Rothschilds? No. I wasn't sure how much into history that I wanted to get into in this, and again, I'm going to answer more of these questions directly, but I think I hit a lot of the points. Okay. But I mean, we need to discuss, should Jews, like myself, be afraid of just random on the street violence, which, yes, by reports appears to have increased significantly in the past year and has been increasing for some time. Okay. But historically, and I mean on the order of thousands of years, Jews are patsies. We've been patsies for whoever happens to be in power in whatever geographic area we happen to be within. We're just this useful group of odd people because we're often so very identifiable. And so when something goes wrong in the plans that the powers that be had, within which the Jews got used within, we're easy to point at. Okay. It's the same thing with Hollywood movies. Why does it seem like all the Christians in Hollywood movies, or the pastors or the preachers, whatever, why are they all Catholic? So obviously they'd be priests, but why are they all Catholic? Because Catholicism has these very clear, they have iconography. They have things that, the collar, right? There's things about Catholicism that are just you instantly know it's Catholicism. You instantly know it's quote unquote Christian. And so when you're making cinema, it's just the easiest thing to do, to not have to engage in a bunch of exposition. Well, this guy has been a Christian since the day he was born, or blah, blah, blah. Nope, you just show a Catholic priest. Everybody gets it. Okay. In the global stage, in global politics, economics, and war, the Jews are used in the same way. Always have been. Okay. Now, those oddities that, that come out of, Jewishness, shall we say, there's often a lot of truth in those oddities, and they stand in contrast to often what is considered acceptable societal mores or religious belief or whatever. And so, when you're looking for that other group who is weird and does weird shit, or shit that we could call sin, yeah, Jews get blamed. Okay. So am I somehow empathizing with Benjamin Netanyahu? No. He's scum just like the rest. Just because somebody's Jewish doesn't prevent them from being evil as fuck, if we're to use conventional concepts of evil. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. Okay. But I'm going to make the very quick statement, and I've done so many podcasts around this, especially a lot of the Into the Voids, which I recommend you listen to all of those. And, of course, listen to the Agora podcast. I mean, just great stuff. Okay. But, like, the state of Israel should not exist. And it exists to be a troublemaker. Like, that was a British Empire creation. Okay. Or if you want to get all Carol Quigley about it, it is an Anglo-American Empire creation to destabilize, shall we say, perhaps, Islamic nationalism, okay? To destabilize the Muslim world. That's, I mean, I don't think that's just opinion, but if it makes you feel better, I'll say that's my opinion on the matter. And as a Jew, and one who believes in the mystical aspects of Judaism, okay, as I've covered before, and again, I might do a re-release of the episode that I recorded due to the October 6th events, October 6th, 2024. For Jews, we October 6th is like saying 9/11 now. Like 10/6 is, it's the same, like it gets treated in the same way, which is, well, take that how you want. But anyway, if I call it October 6th, that's what's meant. Because in that I discuss why, a big part of why I don't think that the state of Israel should exist. Okay. And I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on also the history, including the, religious history, like within Judaism itself, or what I would say is between the lines in Judaism, that like Israel was never really the home of the quote unquote Jews. Okay. Like the history of what we could call the Hebrews goes way farther back, and they have a completely different hometown, multiple different hometowns. In fact, not Jerusalem. Okay. So if it wasn't abundantly clear, I am not a Zionist because there's no Zion to ist. Maybe I'll title the show that. Okay. So the very short version of what do I think is going on here with all this? If this is just a symptom or aspect of World War III, what's the goal? What is the purpose of World War III? Okay. The purpose of World War III, effectively, I mean, there's never just one thing. Let's keep that in mind. Okay. But the purpose of World War III effectively comes down to that debts need to get paid. Okay. And the entire Western world is in fucking debt. And like, again, it's time. It's time for it to get paid up. Like the debts are due. And they can't get paid. Okay. Now I could make an argument, and I think there's some truth to this, including based upon my time spent in the Middle East, that a lot of the conflicts or wars that occurred in the Middle East had more to do with, like, how do I put this? So, we all know this is horseshit, right? The idea that, the Islamic terrorists, the jihadists, they attacked the U.S. because they hated us for our freedoms. Of course, we all know that that's crap. That's just not true. But what is not crap is that the Western world hates Muslims for their austerity. What I mean by that is they hate Muslims for not buying into their capitalist corporatist bullshit. They hate Muslims for not making their mosques out of plastic that they could sell them. They hate Muslims for not buying GMO tomatoes. It's not the Muslims that hate. It's the other way around. I get so disgusted. When I hear Christians. And man, Christianity is, boy, that is on some kind of rise right now. And there are podcasts out there that, like, I mean, I don't have enough buckets in my house to puke into. You understand? Please stop. But they don't. And you hear the same thing from so many of them, and they're so fucking stupid. In saying like, oh, I want to go to the Middle East and because I want the Muslims there to be saved. Shut the fuck up. Those people don't need saving. Not from Jesus. They need to be saved from you. Leave them alone. I'm not saying that, they're perfect people. I'm not saying that they don't do some horrendous shit within certain sects of that, that religion, that belief system. Of course they do. It's true in every belief system, including Christians. Or haven't you burned a witch lately? But I also know that you fucking Westerners aren't their solution. And I hope they never buy your plastic crap. I hope they never raise up a mall. And I love malls, god damn it. But I hope they never raise one up there. I know they already have. I've been there. Fuck. You just couldn't leave them alone. The Western world is pissed that there are millions or billions of people that will not buy their cheap crap and keep their debt from having to get paid. That's what's going on. Or at least that's part of it. There's other parts to it. There's other parts to it that I feel I have firsthand witness to. That includes real estate deals, i.e. ISIS. You're going to ban me YouTube? Go for it. So that's what that's about. Those were hired guns, baby. Those weren't terrorists. Those are real estate agents. Again, debt's got to get paid. We got to create more real estate so, we don't have to actually give the money back to the banks or blah, blah, blah. And no, the banksters are not the Rothschilds. Shut the fuck up. Yeah, there's other reasons too. I think there's aspects of human history that need to be covered up. And that's been going on for a long time. From the Romans to Napoleon to what were the Nazis looking for? Well, they're still looking for it because they're still in fucking power. But regardless, there are things at play here that will pretty much never be talked about. There are forces at play that are not human, that will never be talked about. I mean, not during World War III, maybe after, maybe when it's all said and done, because I do think that we're going to end up with it's going to get worse before it gets better, and it's going to get a lot worse. I'm hopeful for what comes out of it afterwards, though, because much like what happened with the Great Depression, I think a lot of people are going to realize, not that I want these kinds of, catastrophic events to occur, but much like the Great Depression, I think a lot of people are going to suddenly realize what's actually important in life. And I hope that they come out of it calling out a lot of the bullshit. Was the Great Depression engineered or something like that to wipe out the New Thought movement? Whoa, that's an interesting idea. Boy, can you just toss that out there and not explain? Yeah, I can. So moving on. The Jews are patsies. Is this a time where maybe you'd want to put your Star of David, tuck it into your shirt? First off, Jews shouldn't wear Stars of David. You should be wearing menorahs. Okay. No, really. Okay. The Star of David that's not our thing, man. And I even say that as a Kabbalist. I'm not saying that it's like an evil symbol. Okay. But whatever, symbols, that's a whole other podcast to get into. All right. Regardless, no, this is not a time to really hide. Do I think that there is going to be even greater anti-Semitism that is going to occur during all of this? Probably. It's going to get worse before it gets better. At the same time, okay, now, I mean, look, we Jews, we've dealt with this before for thousands of years. Really, thousands. Think of, 11th, 12th century, 13th century Spain. I mean, there have been Holocausts that by percentages, pale, or that make the Holocaust, Kristallnacht, that make the German Holocaust, pale in comparison. And, it's at these times where, what was the reaction at the time when these, kind of insane things happened, with the Jews? Yes, crypto Judaism was a thing where Jews would convert and secretly continue to practice Judaism. Can you empathize with people not wanting to fucking die and yet still hold on to their beliefs? Yeah, I think you can empathize with that. And I think most people do. How about a lot of anarchists out there, right? We drive on roads. We pay a gas tax, even though we despise taxes and blah, blah, blah. But we try to live and to continue on, our message of liberty and whatever else you want to call it, however fanciful you want to get about it. Yeah, we can understand these things, like why people would engage in those sorts of things. It's not because they're goddamn evil people trying to subvert everything, but even if they were trying to subvert it, good, because the Catholic Church is bullshit. A cult in all the worst senses. And you want to get mad at them about that? Fuck, they were doing you a favor. Anyway, I'm sure I'm going to get called out for all of this. Like, here I am calling for peace, telling you Israel shouldn't exist and all this shit. But see, but then I'm also saying, like, yeah, well, actually, crypto Judaism, you can understand why they would engage in this. And so I can just imagine people, just the cognitive dissonance going on, for you. It's like when when Putin fucking came out, because you have all the liberals, fucking Russia, or not just the liberals, but everybody's like, Russia's so terrible, blah, blah, Putin's, the next Hitler, and yada, 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 yada. But then when he comes out and says that he, condemns the actions of Israel, it's like, wait, what? Putin did something right? Like, I mean, just, you can just see their heads exploding, right? Because it's nuance. And people can't handle that today, because nuance does not transmit over the internet. Maybe on a podcast, you might get lucky on some long-form content, but the internet is not built around long-form content anymore. There was a time where it was. But man, if you can't say it in a fucking 30-second YouTube short or a TikTok video, what the fuck are you even saying, right? Holy shit, no wonder people are goddamn confused and falling for just like the dumbest lines of history and threads and narratives of history and of the modern day. So, what should Jews do right now? Again, should you be worried? Should you be picking up a gun, getting ready to fend off all the goyim? See, all right, I'm going to just keep getting myself in trouble. Sorry, I'll say it nicer. Getting ready to fend off the Gentiles and whatever, and the white power people who are coming for you, and like the Nazis. Well, I mean, look, the reality is the Nazis are still in power. In fact, they're using us again. And it's not the other way around. I know a lot of libertarians are like, no, actually, the Holocaust didn't happen, and the Jews that were controlling the Nazis, right? Ashkenazi, see, it says Nazi in the name. What fucking logic is that, you fucktard? Brian, you're just engaging in ad hominem attacks. Yes, I am, because you're an idiot. One of the biggest problems we have today is that enough people won't tell the other person you're fucking stupid. Not everybody deserves an award. Not everybody is intelligent. Jew or Gentile. If you thought you were coming to a place where I appease my audience, you are wrong. So the answer to this, and believe it or not, I made an Instagram post about that. I know, how cute, how kitsch, is really to be met. Anytime we're met with violence, we're met with war, the answer is always radical pride in oneself and radical love. That's the radicalism that you meet radical violence with, which is at the very heart of war. Is that going to necessarily stop what's happening in Israel and Iran, or Ukraine and Russia, or what's going to happen in Europe in 2026, likely, maybe even sooner? Again, when all these debts have got to get paid? No, you can't. Look, this is a storm, okay? You can't stop it. But you can come out stronger on the other side, personally and together, understanding what matters most. What I recommend that people do isn't to pick up guns to defend yourselves. And this could be true for Jew or whoever. I mean, do I think, like, yes, Jews should get back in touch with, the mystical aspects of their lineage and their belief systems and all this, because I think that ultimately we are dealing with we're ultimately in a very mystical war. Okay. Maybe some people are going to completely turn me off right now. Go ahead. Fine. I'll see you on the other side, like I always say, and you'll see I'm right. Yes, I think that Jews should do that. It's not a time to be afraid. When the Jews were being persecuted in Spain and in many other areas, they became, we don't want to do the Bar Kokhba revolt, okay, in Rome, but they became, more deeply mystical, spiritual, whatever. Like, that was the response. And that's the right response. And did it work? I don't know. I look in the mirror, I see a Jew. I guess we survived. I guess we've survived all this shit. You will again. But what should, people do in the face of World War III and all these things? Here's my recommendation. Don't pick up a gun. Pick up a fucking backhoe. Grab some seeds. Start growing your own food. Yeah, I think the economy, the monetary system, like by default, it's like the reason that Israel is being so precise with its missile attacks is not a PR move. That's part of it, but it's not really what it's about. It's also not because they actually give a shit about Iranian lives. Okay, the Israeli government does not. The reason is to prevent cataclysmic failure of the interconnected world that we live in. Okay? There are emails that you get, there are orders that get made when you just buy something, who knows where, that runs through the pipes of the internet that are everywhere on the planet, including Iran. I think also part of that precision comes down to they'd like to put some malls in place. So maybe we won't wreck, maybe we won't turn it into a lifeless void, Iran, because we have shit to sell. We have debts to pay. But to prevent destruction of the, global internet infrastructure, which is completely intertwined with the global political and economic infrastructure, yeah, you've got to be careful where you drop shit. But they're trying to keep this war kind of contained. I don't think that's going to work. Eventually, someone's going to have to do something bigger and things are going to get disrupted and supply chains are going to get disrupted. Communications are going to get disrupted. All of this. Okay. So what I am telling you is that the best things you can do, maybe be friends with your neighbor, have a good solid radio. I reach to my right here. Here's my, my nice Baofeng radio. Oh man, I love this thing so much. Have a nice radio and plant some seeds. Grow some fucking food. If you can, in your backyard. If you're in the cities, I don't know. That's a bad idea anyway. I know some people love cities and you like the connection and everything, and I get that. And there's a power in that you get to work together. So, you can hold fast on that. But that's where we're getting to. And again, for the Jews, I wouldn't say by no means do you want to go around carrying a gun. You want to have the position of peace, which is your lineage, by the way. Peace, not war. You're going to be like, oh, but in Torah, King David did this and blah, blah, blah. They went and what? And what did God, quote unquote, God say to King David with all those wars? What did he say at the end? You shed blood. You don't get to build my temple. He did it wrong by going to war. You do it wrong when you go to war. When you shed blood. I did wrong Me, Brian SOVRYN, 20 years ago, being in the Middle East. I think back on that person. I'm glad I'm not that person anymore. The person will always be a part of me, but I'm glad I'm not that person anymore. That person was wrong, and clearly, with what's going on today, did nothing to solve anything that was perceived as a problem or an evil. No war has been stopped. And in fact, in Afghanistan, last time I checked, the people that, quote unquote, we supposedly kicked out are back in power. What changed? Fucking nothing. This time around, though, I think things could get so bad that things will change. And just be prepared for that. And that's what I've got. Yeah, I mean, again, unfortunately, to answer Seth's question a little more directly, I think there is going to be, and there's the potential that, Jews who do speak out against the Israeli government could be targets. We've already seen that over and over again based on reports. Okay. And that would include me, I suppose. I don't think my voice is that big. I don't have those kinds of delusions of grandeur, but no, believe me, I really don't. I know you think I do, but I don't. But yes, be careful, but present yourself with absolute peace. And speak out for peace in every way, in any way you can. And when people say, it's like, if you're a Jew and people ask you like, oh, are you worried about Israel? Just respond with, I'm worried for the whole of humanity. I am worried for the whole of the future. Everyone. That's the message that has to get out there. I know you think it's cute and it's like, well, that's not going to stop other people from dying and whatever else. I wonder, because I don't think we've ever really had, movements out there that really spoke with unconditional, radical love for all species, the dignity of all species. I don't think that's ever really, I don't, and I don't want to get lost on that because I want to wrap this up. Okay. But I don't think that kind of message has ever been truly propagated. And I don't think that there have ever been many people who have truly walked and talked that. And I think when you do walk and talk that, things change. Things do change. There's a tide coming. And like I said, it's not going to be pretty. There's going to be a mess left after it. But that's not the end. Okay, this is not the existential crisis that everyone's talking about. There's amazing things being developed. There's amazing changes happening. And you believe me, and I mean this, like you can really feel it. There's amazing changes happening with humanity itself because it knows we're a social species. So there is a we. Okay? Like I'm all about concentrating on the I more than the we, but there is a we. And that collective we is sensing something. And there are people who are feeling it, that we can't keep going like this. Something has to change. And that opportunity is going to come to make that change. You could start planting the seeds right now, metaphorically and maybe literally. I will leave this at that. And again, my deepest love and thanks to everyone that's reached out to me, and my wife. I mean, my wife, she, yes, she's a Native American princess, but she identifies as Jewish strongly, when Hanukkah comes around, she's at work passing out, she's shelling out the gelt, right? All the chocolate in the coins, the whole thing. We have our menorah. The whole business, she's so incredibly, again, I don't want to speak for her, but I think I can safely say she's so incredibly proud of it. And I'm so honored that people are concerned about us. Okay? And that's a powerful sense of love to have. And just extend, if you can, extend that love as far as it can go. Okay? Have that radical love, that radical concern for everyone and everything. Okay? And we'll get through this. We will. I can tell you that. Why? Because as this whole episode was about, the Jews, we're still here. You can be too. You don't have to be Jewish to do it. Okay? But just know that it's possible. That ancient peoples can exist for thousands of years. So can you. Now, really, with that, I will see all of you, on the other side.